Uh, I'm looking forward to talking to you today about Shrewsbury School International India and the pastoral care, the boarding provision, and everything that goes into to being living and working in a fantastic boarding school. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully that is going to work in a second. So, bear with me. Um, what I hope you do today is, if you have any questions, please type them in the message tab bar at the bottom, and then our admin will collate those, and I'll answer questions at the end. Hopefully, you won't have too many questions because I'll cover all the things which you will think are important if you're considering sending your child to come and be at this wonderful school. I'd just like to start by saying, actually, I've just spent the whole afternoon with a really, really nice family, four girls, and they've come from England, and they're really excited about the prospect of boarding. And it really reminded me about how exciting boarding school is, not only for the teachers who are passionate about it, but also for the kids. And so I really hope that I can give you a sense of what makes this place a really special place. So again, I'm just going to stop that there. I might need to ask for a little bit of assistance, but let me just having a technical hiccup here. Fahad, could you just quickly kind of help me? I want to make sure I'm showing the right screen. So,
in a minute.
Here we go. There we go. I think that is the right screen. You should be looking at boarding and pastoral care. So I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Peter Willett. I have lived and worked in boarding schools for 23 years. Prior to that, I worked in business. I was a company director. I was an advertising photographer in London for 9 years. And I also spent a number of years in the British Army. And so hopefully you are going to realize that I've done more than just be in education. And that's something which I think adds a bit of value to what I do, especially when I'm talking to senior students about their potential career paths. At least I can talk, having been out in business and had different experiences. So I know a lot about boarding. I went to boarding school as a child, and I've worked now at 3 international boarding schools, one in Switzerland for 18 years, one in China for 3 years, where I was the deputy head pastoral in charge of boarding there, and now this wonderful experience to set up Shrewsbury International in India, Bhopal. So moving on. Oh, there we go. So I just want to focus to start off with what the aim of boarding and pastoral care is. And it's quite simple, really. Our absolute top priority, and you will hear, make no apologies about that, you will hear that our priority is to provide a safe environment for children. That is our #1 priority. Everything else is secondary. And as my job, as part of my job, I'm responsible for the safety of children. That's what's called the designated safeguarding lead. So I am not only responsible for it, but I am also enforce the standards that we will be operating under to make sure that children are safe when you elect to send them to live with us.
Probably going to be
so we support those students, and we help them develop through whole education, a whole person education, I should say. Another way of saying that is holistic. So academics is important, of course, but so is developing as a human being, to be kind and generous. And to do that, we use what's called the Floriette. So on the left, as you're looking at the screen, what you're looking at is the 4 areas that we want to activate within an individual: the intellective. So obviously that's to do with the mind and how we think. Then we move clockwise to active, element of sports and outdoor activities, a bit of adventure, maybe through things like Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is a globally renowned award. And if you get to the highest level of Duke of Edinburgh, for example, the gold level, it is the equivalent of an A level. And it's highly valued, not only by universities, but also by employers. They look at A level. They look at A levels, of course, but they also look at things like Duke of Edinburgh. Reflective. I think it's a word that is not spoken enough about, but to actually be reflective, to think about things, whether that be spiritually or just morally, is a really important part of development for us as adults as well as for children. And so to develop reflective practice, we really want to do. Expressive really taps into the idea of creativity, the arts, developing new ideas. Now, I'm actually an art teacher, but I wouldn't say that that's the reason that we should develop creativity and self-expression. It's because actually coming up with new ideas is what you need to be a business leader. It's what you need to be adaptive in a changing marketplace. And the ability, obviously, to express oneself is also buried in there. On the right, you've got a list, and you can read for yourself. So I will only highlight a couple of them. You have values, the things that we think, or the virtues that we think are really valuable to focus on. And these are the things, kindness and courage, for example, are things which we will go to when we're faced with students that are struggling. We will go to when we are faced with problems. We will use these virtues to help us make decisions. I will focus a little bit on two which I think parents hopefully will think are valuable too. Self-mastery is really important, especially for teenagers, to actually understand yourself, to understand your own emotions, to understand what your interests are is really important. And in this day and age, I think with all of the pulls and the demands on young people, self-mastery is something that we as educators should focus on. And I think that some schools perhaps don't enough. And the second one that I want to focus on is integrity. And quite simply, I think integrity is about doing the right thing when nobody is looking. It's walking past a piece of litter on your campus and you pick up the litter, for example. You do it not because you're going to get some sort of reward. You do it because it's the right thing to do. So these are the things that we will use to help guide the decisions that we make in boarding, but also across the whole school, all the way up to board level. So I've said that safety is important, but I want to expand on that. So the environment obviously needs to be safe. And if you haven't, I would strongly recommend that you come and visit this campus and see for yourself the wonderful environment. 153 acres. The campus is really large, but it is surrounded by a 10-foot wall. It is very safe. We have that physical safety in place to look after young people and adults while they live and they work on the campus. I think safety also includes feeling emotionally that you are safe. So feeling safe to express your emotions about things when you're unhappy. We want boarding to be a place where if you feel unhappy, you tell the staff that are caring for you why you feel unhappy. And you would expect that as a parent, that your children express how they're feeling, because it's only then that we can help them move through that moment and help them move into a place where they are in this place of self-mastery. I think part of that also, I would recognize from my experience, is we need to recognize that young people make mistakes. In fact, old people sometimes make mistakes as well. And a school should be a place where you can make mistakes as part of learning. And so safety is more than just the physical safety. It's a safe environment for other things, emotional learning, and other types of learning to happen. So as part of the aim, supporting the young people as they develop. And obviously the academic focus is very much there. It has to be there. So the boarding teams and the pastoral team, really, they are there to make sure that students do well academically and understand how to navigate the struggles that they may encounter. And I'll give you an example. If I spoke to a young student today who said, "I really don't like this subject because I don't understand it. And when I don't understand it, I just go quiet and she doesn't say anything." So she emotionally closed down. And I was just talking, I said, "But you need to open up so the teacher understands that what it is that makes you a little bit afraid of making a mistake in this subject." And so the emotions is part of it, and our teachers will be part of that journey because all of our teachers will support the pastoral side. And really, what we want is we want them to be happy. We want students to enjoy learning, to engage with it constructively. And if they're happy, we think that they'll learn faster. It'll be a deeper sense of learning and ultimately better learning. So another part of what boarding offers and pastoral care offers is challenge. Yeah, and you might think, but I don't want my child to be challenged. We want children to be challenged. It's really important for their personal development that they actually hit things which are a little bit harder than they perhaps expected. We want to make things, and please don't confuse challenge with danger. I use this photograph on the right because I took this photograph 2.5 years ago when I was on an expedition in the mountains close to the boarding school where I worked with these students from China doing Duke of Edinburgh. And I want you to focus on three expressions. You can only see three expressions. The two are obvious. There's one smile that is a quiet smile. There's one smile that's a forced smile. And then in the background, I think you might be able to see there's a real determined head down. And that kind of summed up what I mean by challenge. Those students, yes, they got a bit wet. Yes, they got a bit tired. But when they got back, they had surmounted the challenge that we had put in front of them. The weather had made it a little bit more special. But those individuals had grown and had become stronger because of the challenge that we had placed in front of them that they had overcome. So those tough experiences, sometimes just because of the weather, are things which help individuals grow and develop. So another way of expressing this is this challenge. It helps them to achieve more. And why is this? So everybody, adults included, and I would put my hand up to say this, we have a comfort zone. And some of us have a really big comfort zone because of my experience in the army. I'm more than happy to jump out of an aeroplane, even when it's flying, because I've done it before. And so that is within my comfort zone. But I'm not for a moment saying that everyone's comfort zone is huge. But for some people, their comfort zone is really small. And when you're young, it really can be very small. And if you've come from a family that have kept the comforts quite small, it can be quite restricting. And all we want to do is we want to put a little challenge outside of the comfort zone because we believe this is where the learning happens. And it's this very simple diagram is the best way that I describe where the magic of being challenged really is so important. But once we've challenged people, what we really need them to do is to be able to reflect. Now, you might go, what's this? It looks like he's talking about expeditions. But when I go back to that picture of those kids in China, when they came back to the boarding house, they started talking about their experiences and sharing all of their experiences. And that is to hear and listen to that going on was how this deepened learning. So to really make explicit reflection as part of the learning process, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be in the boarding house or whether it be going out on an expedition or on the sports pitch. Reflection is a really important part of what we want to nurture within boarding. So our values. So I want to just focus on these. These are important, and you've seen them, I know, before, but it's kindness, courage, integrity, self-mastery, spirit, and wisdom. Some people confuse spirit with spirituality. It's not. Spirit means, a sense of who you are, a sense of get up and go, a sense of wanting to be quite dynamic. Someone who is the sort of person that would volunteer and go around and shake the hand with a stranger. Sense of really being someone who has confidence amongst others and a sense of adventure. I think wisdom is something which comes after you've had experiences. It comes often with time. We talk about old wise people, and I think it comes. But wisdom also comes from having many experiences. And so, listening to young people who've had experiences that I haven't, I find that fascinating because I learn through their experiences. And so, having lots of experiences builds wisdom. So, who supports your child in boarding and in pastoral care? Well, there are lots of people around a child, and they're all there, as I say, to help support and help develop. And I've set up this diagram in it. So, a pupil normally has got a family that is doing this job. When you come to a boarding school, this circle increases, and it starts off with I'll stop at the top here with a house parent or HSP, the house parent. Obviously, I'll go anti-clockwise. Then there's the RT, the residential tutor. These are people who live in the boarding house, and in our boarding houses, we'll have a house parent, and then we'll have two residential tutors or RTs, and then we'll have the visiting tutors. And your child will be in a group of maybe 4 or 5 students, and they'll have one tutor who they meet every day to give them advice, either pastorally or academically, and to connect with other teachers to see what's going on. The family is still involved, so the family still can communicate with the pupils, of course. And we'll have a buddy system. So we'll pair students up with each other so that they can look after each other and keep an eye on each other and help each other out. So within the boarding house, you're looking at the kind of the family being extended. And outside of that, we'll have other groups. So we'll have student leaders, and those are slightly more older students who will take responsibility for developing new ideas, for maybe leading some of the clubs or the initiatives, for helping around school, as well as helping in the house. Obviously, the teachers, they are there to guide the students and to support them, not only academically, but also emotionally if needed. And obviously, we have the medical staff, which includes nurses and doctors, nurses. And these are all people that the students would have contact with very, very easily in a boarding environment. Going out to another onion layer, we get even more people. So we have the doctor, who comes in every day. We'll have external professionals. So if we needed any sort of external medical or psychological professionals, we would get them in. We also have, obviously, on site, we have the deputy head co-curricular at the top there. We have the deputy head academic going around to the left. We have the deputy head pastoral, that's me. We have the futures team. The futures team, they're the people that keep an eye on university placements, keep an eye on what your child would want to do in their future. We call them the futures teams. We have heads of departments, so the people that manage for example, the whole maths department. They're the people that really keep a very close eye on academic progress, and they would do that at quite a granular level, looking down at each student to see how they're progressing in their subject area. And careers, careers experiences, so getting in guest speakers, for example, some of the things that we want to make sure that happens so that students are not getting, that they're getting experiences from outside of the school environment. The library staff, I put that in there because in the sixth form, students have lessons where they should self-study, and that often happens in the library. And the library staff are really good at sourcing material and speaking to students about what they need to do in the future. And then finally, to complete this support around the child, we've got the headmaster, obviously, there's the admissions team, finance, and there is various other support staff. So in a boarding school, what you're looking at there is all of the adults, all the types of adults that work to support the pupils in a boarding environment. And so it's quite an extensive network of support mechanisms that are in place. And so what do all of these people deliver? So what actually do they deliver? What are the key essential ingredients to good pastoral care and good boarding? So the first thing, as I said, and I make no excuses, the environment needs to be safe, and safe for all those reasons that I mentioned earlier on. We need to know the pupils. Knowing your child is absolutely the most important thing. We need to know what makes them really interested, what their passions are, what they don't like, what they who their friends are. We need to understand them, understand how they tick, to enable us to really get the very, very best out of schooling. And by knowing them properly, that is the way to connect. And as soon as we've connected with someone, we've started that relationship. Because good pastoral care, its absolute foundation, is based on relationships. It's not based on authority, it's based on mutual respect and understanding each other and what each other want to achieve. And what we want to achieve as educators is the very best for the child. Understanding their emotional needs is really, really important, and I won't gloss over that more. But understanding, their fears and their aspirations and their loves and hates, as I said, is really, really a key to that. We need to be confidential, obviously, with that information, and we need to understand as educators where those boundaries are. We are friendly but not friends. That's really important. We don't have favourites. We treat everyone the same. And if boundaries are crossed in terms of the student's behaviour, we make sure that there are sanctions. So we are firm and fair in our dealings with young people. We need to build that emotional literacy so that the young people can explain what's going on. And this is particularly important when you look at adolescent development. This emotional literacy, being able to communicate how they're feeling, is something that teenagers need to be taught. And it is often overlooked, but in good education, this is almost at the forefront, is that behaviour is a form of communication. So if a child is misbehaving, we need to understand why, and it's often based on being able for them to be able to emotionally explain what is going on. So that's really what good pastoral care delivers in a nutshell. And finally, we make sure that we care for each child. As I said, we don't have favourites. We look after all of them, and we get to know all of them really well. So one of the things that we deliver to help with this emotional development is called personal and social development. It includes a number of areas, including relationships, friends. It also includes technology, safe use of technology. It includes, for example, things here like the feelings thermometer, how to express one's emotions, what to do if you're angry or are anxious. And so there's various tools that we use to help children to be able to express themselves so that we can help them. And teenagers, I have a teenage son, he's notoriously bad at expressing his feelings sometimes. And so we have to sort of give him time to work it through, able to tell us actually how he's feeling. And that's the sort of thing that we would do with the PSD program, which is integral to good pastoral care. I know this only because many parents that I've met who've come to the campus to see us spoken a lot about food, and I think food is also linked. So to go back, I think food is linked to mental health. I think if we are well fed, we've got good food, we've got a good balanced diet, I think that food makes us feel happy. It makes us feel, a really nice meal today. And we've teamed up with Sodexo, and please do look them up. Sodexo is a global company. I've worked with them in the two other schools that I've worked in. I work with Sodexo. They are a global company, and we have worked with our full-time nutritionists to make sure that we have three key things. That's a balanced, nutritious diet, or balanced diet, and that there is enough food. And those are my three benchmarks. The trouble with food is that what I like, many of you might not like, and vice versa. So it's quite subjective. The key thing is that there's a broad range. So we will have a broad range of mainly vegetarian food, but there will, of course, be non-veg option prepared in separate kitchens. and obviously served separately. And also we will, excuse me, we will be taking from parents any allergies, and any specific allergies, those will be highlighted with lists, food about what it contains, and anyone who has severe allergies, of course, that will also, they will have separately plated and prepared food. So allergies, we're prepared for, and more importantly, we're going to have healthy, nutritious meals. We're going to go back for more, because that's what I like to see, is empty plates, and I hate waste. So another question which I think is really important: what's a day at school going to be look like? Now, rather than sharing the entire timetable, I thought I'd just present it in a slightly different way. So here on the left, you'll see that we've got breaks in blue. We've got house time, which is like being at home. Then we have lessons, and then we have co-curricular or sports. So in a typical day, you'd wake up normally about 6:45, 6:30. There'd be wake up in the boarding house. You'd get showered, clean your teeth, or get dressed, get ready for school, pack the school bag, and then you would go off and have breakfast. You'd then go straight from classes after breakfast, because it's like a 100-meter walk, and you'd have your lessons. You'd have a break in between, and that would be actually in the student common room, which is in the teaching block, so they wouldn't have to walk far to get their break. And then they go through to lunchtime, excuse me, which would be about, I think it's 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock is lunch break. So quite a significant lunch break. And there we would expect students that have a great meal. They'd also be able to sit and chat. They can go back to the library to finish off the break before, or they go back to the boarding house if they've got activities or sports. So they'd start their activities or sports having changed in the boarding house. Then they'd have a break in the sports activities. Then they get back to the boarding house, and they would start their first homework session, which would be an hour. And they would have dinner at about 7:30 in the evening, slightly earlier, I think, than some Indian families eat. So we're trialing 7:30. And then for the more senior students, they go back and have a second hour homework session. And for the younger students, we probably have reading time. Reading is a great way to develop literacy and vocabulary, and then a little bit more relaxed time for them, leading up to a bedtime of around 9:30, 9:45, with lights out about 10 o'clock. Now, for some of you, you might go, that's really quite early. One of the things that's absolutely crucial to development and to learning is good sleep. So as part of my looking after young people, I want to make sure that we make sure students can get at least 8 hours of good sleep every night. After a very, very busy day at school, I think they'll want to sleep. And so sleep is a vital part of learning. We don't want people trying to cram in to do work at 2 o'clock in the morning. It is counterproductive. And so it'll be busy days with a good night's sleep, and as you can see there, at least 4 breaks involving food and snacks throughout the day. Phones and devices. A lot of parents have asked about that, and as I'm sure you're aware, electronic devices have taken over some teenagers' lives. We will have a minimum 3-week ban on any mobile devices in school. That means they can bring them to school, but they won't see them for the first 3 weeks. They will be locked away. We want this to be a bit of a detoxification. We want the young people who come to this school to understand that they can have fun and they can enjoy life without having to be stuck in front of a screen, often doing nothing or flicking through mindless videos. If they need or if they want to speak to family, they can use the school phone whenever they're in the boarding house. So we're not cutting off communication. We're trying to restrict the use of negative screen time, because I'm sure everybody who is listening to this has got a mobile phone within 12 inches of their hands, or might even be looking at one now. They're incredibly powerful and useful tools, but teenagers at the moment are not using them responsibly. And so this is what we recognize, is that we need to teach young people how to use them responsibly. but we're going to start off when we start the school with this kind of detoxification is what I'm calling it. I think detox is a good word because I think it was about 10 or 15 years ago that clinically doctors recognized or psychologists recognized digital withdrawal as an actual clinical condition. And so I think detox is the right word. So when will your son or daughter get phone time? So I've made a little overlay and it'll just give you a sense of where it would be. So after the second prep session, we will allow probably about 20 minutes of phone time. And this is going to be 3 times a week, we think so, and perhaps slightly longer on a Sunday afternoon, where, because Sundays is where I'm teaching, it will be a slightly longer period on Sunday, but maybe maximum 40 minutes. I'm not talking hours. All devices, regardless of whether it be a smartwatch, whether it be an Alexa, whether it be a phone or a laptop, will be secured in the duty office overnight. Students, when they go to their bedrooms, will not have devices that can access the internet, and the student Wi-Fi will be turned off. So my definition of a device is any instrument that can take a SIM card. We will not allow students to have second or third phones. They will be confiscated and parents will be given them when they meet up with them. And we'll be very strict on that. So that's phones and devices. Exeat weekends. I want to talk about that. So if you're sending your child to us, we have a thing called Exeat weekends. And on our school calendar, which you can see on the website, in blue, I think it is in blue, purple, we have our Exeat weekends. And those are weekends. There's the first one, which will be 13th and the 14th of September, where we encourage parents to come and collect their children and then take them away from school just for a couple of days to have a break. We recognise that being in a very hard-working environment, which the school will be, it's quite intense. So we want to give your children a chance, obviously, to spend time with the family, to tell stories about what they've been doing, and obviously to connect with you. So there's 3 weekends throughout the year, which I've highlighted there, and those so it's once a term, and it's an opportunity to break the normal patterns, for you to come and take your child out, maybe to Bopal, to one of the lovely hotels, and go out and have some lovely meals, do some shopping, or go and do some sightseeing locally, and just to reconnect face to face. So the Exeat weekends are weekends where we really hope that students look forward to, and we hope that parents look forward to it, so that everybody, staff and students, can just get a little break halfway in a term. And so that's what an Exeat weekend means. It means you're kind of leaving the school for a short period of time, not to be confused with the large holidays that we have. And the large holidays that we have, if you look just as a picture on the school calendar, or the school fasty as it's called, or the yellow is all big holiday days. So that is quite a quick rattle through. I fully aware that many of you might have many questions, so I'd ask you to think about those. If you want to reach out to me, please, you can email me at peterwillett@shrewsburyindia.in. And I think that would be great. I'm more than happy to have conversations, but if you just outline the questions on an email, I'm more than happy to respond to those. I also want to just quickly advertise on the 7th of June at the same time, our headmaster, Mr. Dominic Tomlin, he'll be giving another talk along from his point of view about what we offer. So please do diarise 7th of June, 1700 hours to 6 o'clock-ish, India Central Time. Dominic's going to be giving a talk not dissimilar, probably better than mine, about the school. So I'm going to stop sharing now and put my camera back on, and hopefully that's worked. And I've got some questions here. So let's just, I'm just reading out. So, love that you'll be finding Shrewsbury Way. You'll also be overlaying this with the local cultural differences. That's the question. So, and will we have a matron for each house? So, if the parents I met today, that's exactly what I said. India's got some amazing cultural opportunities, and there are some really interesting cultural opportunities local. I learned two things today. One is that in centuries ago, the Bhopal district was led by female Mughals. Now, they have a particular, I apologize, I've forgotten this. And I thought that was fascinating piece of history. And what was interesting about it, the family that I taught had four girls. So we had this long conversation about the local cultural history that we want to explore. And so that's exactly the sort of thing that Bhopal offers. Also, there's some cave paintings, which I think is something like 20,000 ridiculously old cave paintings from which are in the local area. And certainly one of the things that I'm going to do as someone who's new to Bhopal is make sure that we really do use our local cultural jewels to enhance the education. I would add to that that looking beyond that, we also want to make sure that we are outward looking and global. So we will, of course, be looking at local cultural opportunities, but we also wanted to expose students to other cultures and other, wonders of the world almost. So, we would consider looking at, we want to make sure that the students have the opportunity perhaps to go and to visit the wonderful universities on the west coast of America, or go and see Paris and London or Berlin, and actually go and experience different cultures and just see what it might be like to potentially go to university in a place like that. To answer your question about matrons, yes, we will be having, we won't call them matrons for some reason, excuse me, we've settled on the word house administrators, but to all intents and purposes, there'll be a matron in each house, and that person will be responsible for making sure the house admin runs, and also helping the students get organised in the mornings and the evenings, and liaising closely with the nurses and the doctors regards any health issues. We are definitely we're a secular school, so we don't have any particular religious focus. And in fact, I met a young boy who came to visit the campus recently, who asked so what about those students that do want to practice their religion? And we will make every effort for people who want to practice their religion. And one of the things that I particularly like about the campus is the architect or the gardener, the garden designer, we should say, who probably is more of an architect, who's I think India famous, has he's created a space which is a bit like a Zen space, and it looks out over the Indian countryside because the school is on a hill. And I went past, I'm not religious, but I just thought it looked like a really lovely place to go and have a sort of spiritual moment. So we want people to experience that, and we will, of course, support anyone who has any religious needs where we can. Let me just what type of activities will happen in the boarding houses? So activities in the boarding houses, and what activities at weekends. So in the boarding houses, one of the things I put on the list and the purchase list is we're going to have, so in the evenings in free time, there's going to be things like baby foot, tennis table. We will have an Xbox or a PlayStation so that we can have team games like esports playing maybe in between the houses. We're going to have lots of board games. I hope over time that the house builds a library of books. And each floor, for those of you who visited the campus, each floor has got various spaces which are big enough, for example, to have its own tennis table, or a reading space with lounges. So the one thing about this campus, I would say, is that the spaces are really generous. I call it elbow room. There's a lot of space for activities to happen, not only in the boarding house, but in the grounds of the boarding house, which is fenced. There's outdoor spaces also, where perhaps barbecues could happen, or the tennis table could go out underneath a covered area. One of the things that I'm really keen on is that we listen to the students and listen to what they want to do. So one of the things that we'll be setting up in very, very early on is student councils, where student voice is heard and it's coordinated. And that will happen through the boarding houses. We're going to listen to them. And if they say, look, we really want to have table tennis competitions because the girls and the boys want to play again, that's exactly the sort of initiative that we want to encourage the students to think about, rather than it all being teacher-led. So we will be supportive of activities, but there will be lots for the students to do. And on the weekends, on the weekends there'll be a mixture of activities. Those will vary from day trips. So, for example, it might be that we do a cinema trip into Bhopal if there's an age-appropriate and language-appropriate film. There's a really good cinema in Bhopal, and we might do a cinema trip that comes back at maybe sort of 10 o'clock, and the students have an opportunity to perhaps to grab a rubbish McDonald's meal if what they choose, and that would obviously be staffed and safe. Other trips might be overnight, so we might go and do a hiking trip in the mountains at about 2.5 hours away, where we might get a minibus. We might rent a lodge. That would be staffed with both male and female staff, and appropriately staffed with appropriate guides, all the risk is so that we have maybe a weekend adventure. There might be sporting events on some weekends where we would hope that the students and the teams would go out and play other teams. So the weekends are busy places. So remember, there are lessons on Saturday mornings. So we need to just make sure and balance fatigue. So my job is to take that step back sometimes and go, how's everyone doing? Students especially, but are they tired? Do they need a lie-in on a Sunday? Do we alter the trip? And my job is to be, to keep my finger on the pulse to make sure that we're challenging but not pushing too far. Someone said, "Can I mail questions?" Please email me questions. Absolutely delighted to answer further questions. Foundation fortnight, some of the stuff. Yeah, so foundation fortnight. We call that student induction. Yes, at the moment it's not a fortnight, it's 10 days, and I can just outline that. The induction program, I'm going to call it. What we want to do is we want to start off with routines. Students need routine. From my experience, they like routine. It's predictable. It makes them less anxious. They know what's coming. It reduces homesickness if you know what's coming. So on day one, students are going to go to lessons, and it will start like that. The induction actually will start in the evenings in the boarding house. And in the induction, we will have sessions on anti-bullying, we'll have sessions on device use, we'll have sessions on student leadership, how student councils, how that's going to run. We'll have sessions where the students are allowed to design the crest for their house, so that they are a part of their own ethos, their own culture. And so that first important week where they understand what it is to live the virtues that I mentioned earlier on, that's all going to come across in this induction program, so that they understand the Salopian way, so that they understand what our expectations are of them and how we want them to behave, not only sort of face to face, but how we want them to behave in their futures. And I hope that as prospective or even current parents, that those virtues that I highlighted have resonance with you, and ones that you go, yeah, if my child exhibited all those virtues, I'd be really proud of them. So I hope that answered that question about sort of the foundation fortnight. We call it induction, but yes, and I will take I've planned it, I think, for 7 full days. And I'll take a measure on how successful it's been as to whether we need to repeat or extend it out to a fortnight. But at the moment, all of the key areas that I think we need to cover will be covered in a week. That also means, and as in the first week, I've said to the deputy head academic, I don't want any homework, so that we can focus on that foundation. And then we'll build homework, will start in the second week. And I think probably that will go down quite well with the students. Just going to, excuse me, I'm going to pick up some questions have been shared on WhatsApp. So I'm just going to quickly look at some of those. So, what provisions will be in place for international students on expat weekends? So, in fact, I can talk quite accurately about that. So, the family that I met today, their four children would be coming from London, from England, and so the parents aren't going to fly in for 2 days. They might do, but they might not be able to. So, what we would ask is that if they had, and they do have relatives who live in India, but would be guardians. Now, those might be cousins. And so guardianship is not a legal term. It's normally a family member, and it's someone that you would trust, that could be that your son or daughter could go and stay with on that expat weekend. If you really couldn't do it because you're from overseas, that's not a problem. We will make sure that someone, it would be someone from the boarding house will be looking after your child, and that would just be on a rotational duty. And of course, in the other option that may well happen at some point is if your child's made some really good friends in the house, they might get invited on an expat weekend. Any children that would be left on campus because they couldn't get off campus because their parents were abroad, we would make sure that it's a weekend where they do go to the cinema and have some time, so they wouldn't be just in their room. We'd make sure that it was an entertaining weekend, and they had a break. Next question. How far do we encourage kids to be sports people? Can be a kid in this be in your school aspiring to be a sports person? I can't tell you how impressed I've been with the vision of this school. They have invested, as an example, the rowing that we've invested in to set up in the aquatic centre can only really supply rowing for 4 people at a time. Now, but the cost of putting that in, they almost could have put in a second swimming pool. So the investment in rowing, horse riding, cricket, football, swimming, pickleball, inside sports, basketball, shooting, it is phenomenal. It is going to be a sporty school. 153 acres. We are going to have sports at the heart of what we do. And we're going to encourage students to have a go at all the sports, because it's only by gaining a bit of wisdom from having had an experience that you go, I really like that. And I'll use my son because I think being a parent helps me be a better teacher now. My son was really scared of climbing because he grew up in Switzerland. And I had a friend who was a qualified climbing instructor, and I said, could you just take Edward and just show him how to climb for a. And Edward I think he was only 8 at the time, and he's like, I'm really scared of heights. I said, well, just try it. Took 2 goes, 2 half-an-hour lessons, and it was only after that he came back in the car. I said, how was it? I was driving. He went, I really like climbing. So he went from being this really quite nervous child, the 8-year-old, to being just pushed a little bit with a professional to someone who really likes climbing. So he's now got back into climbing and has embraced that for himself, along with other sports. So we want to compel to impel, is what I would say. And the sports here is going to be fantastic. We don't. So really good question. Is it purely boarding school or is it for day scholars? So one of the things that makes us stand out about all the other boarding schools, not only in China, but I would say across a lot of Europe now, is we are going to be a full boarding school. So we're not a weekly boarding school, and we're not a bi-weekly. We're a full boarding school. So unless there is an emergency or a family emergency, we would expect students to be in the boarding school. What would I say about that? From my experience, not only as a boarder when I was a child, I was immersed in boarding. I had 1 expat a term, and I kind of forgot expats were coming. Oh yeah, I've got an expat coming. Oh, I'm going to see mum and dad. Great. It was kind of, I was immersed in the whole system. And because I was immersed, I got a lot out of it. And going in and out of school weekly or daily breaks that immersion. And so we're going to stand by this. We're not going to let our boarding erode. And I think that's really, really important that we're just upfront about that. Parents have a choice of education. We are laying out our stall, and that's what I'm doing now, laying out our stall of what we offer. But we are a full boarding school. Can a kid or a sports person, by just having an hour at disposal to play his favourite sport, just into knowing how to manage a kid prepare for sport by just having an hour? So I think that question is saying in free time, or can a kid specialise? Simple answer to that is yes. For example, the horse riding, uh, the campus bit is being built in phases. So we are just getting close to the end of phase one. Then we will open. Then phase two, more facilities will be added, specifically more boarding when more students arrive. Phase two is when we were going to introduce horse riding, but because a student is arriving who's actually already quite specialised in horse riding, we just brought it forward. So that child will have specific specialist time in her sports and activities time to go off and train with someone who is, fully professional at improving her horse riding skills. And so I think we've also got another child who's a good shot. And by the same that we've actually hired, and I met a lovely young girl who's a national sports coach, and so she will be leading our shooting team training. And certainly, I'm pretty sure a lot of students will get into shooting as the skill that it is. I'm quite looking forward to getting back into that myself as well. So I hope that answers your question about sort of specialising. And I think I would add to that, we also want to have what called playtime, where the boys and girls they can go and kick a football around, we'll go and play a quick bit of cricket. We will create time for that to happen as well. I think it's important that we recognise that there is a time when we just need to let kids be kids. And that sort of kind of free play time and that free sports time is really important that we build in. So I think I'm right in saying I think I've reached all of my questions. I'm just quickly looking to check that I haven't got any more, and I don't think I have. So I hope I have answered many of your questions. As I say, please do reach out to me if you feel by email if you feel that you do. I'd be delighted to answer any questions. And if we need to make a follow-up phone call, or Zoom call, I'm more than happy to do that. Please, I think nothing, doing this is great, but nothing beats face-to-face conversations. Nothing beats coming to see the campus. I think do look at us on the website. And although coming to see the campus is great, please remember that's only the canvas for the great education that we plan to deliver when the school opens in August. So do come and see us. That's my challenge to you. And we'll make sure you're not too far out of your comfort zone. So thank you very much. I will say sayonara, and I hope you've enjoyed my talk. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.